teaching the law of Christ, honouring Christ as King. LawAndLife.org hosts free bi-weekly Bible studies on the law of God. To take part or view the recordings, sign up at LawAndLife.org by clicking on the Whiz IQ icon. God bless you as you seek to fear Him and diligently obey His word. I want to use the Theos framework to examine Law and Liberty Chapter 2, the Sanctity of Life, and start with transcendence, then hierarchy, then ethics, and sanctions and succession. I want at each point to contrast the humanistic covenant with the Christian covenant. Transcendence. The question is, who's in charge here? For humanism, life is sovereign. In page 10, Albert Schweitzer is characterized as saying that all life is equally sacred and holy and equally to be reverenced. For the Christian, of course, God, the Lord, is sovereign. Furthermore, for the Christian, life, or the sanctity of life, is not autonomous and is not holy in and of itself. Hierarchy. The next issue is hierarchy or representation. The question is, to whom do I report? For the humanist, there is no God, just life, and the idea of hierarchy is, officially at least, rejected, at least in Albert Schweitzer's case. There can be no differentiation between man, the animals, plants, and the rest of the universe. So there is a radical rejection of hierarchy. When it comes to representation, Rushdoony chooses a scientist and literary figure, part of the intellectual elite, you might say, Albert Schweitzer. And it is scientists and elite intellectual figures who are the ruling class, who define and represent God, small g, to man, and man to God. In this case, God being the principle of the sanctity of life, or life itself. In page 14, he talks about the ego of this ruling class and their intellectual pride, and the confidence that they represent the ruling class of the ages. And despite their radical equalitarian rhetoric, they are committed to ruling and see themselves as above the normal people. He goes on to say that they are presumptuous, that is, they have arrogated authority unto themselves, which was not delegated to them by God. He says, we hear much about equality from men who tell us they are our superiors and therefore know what is best for us. Additionally, as it concerns hierarchy and representation, he takes the example of a father of a woman who had been raped, who insisted that the rapist was not to blame, but more so his environment, that is, the society which made this criminal. He thus reversed the Bible's hierarchy of God over the creation and God's representative man over the creation, and rather puts creation over man instead. Christianity, however, sees God as separate from creation, and Christianity sees man as God's vicegerent over all creation. The authority of God is exercised by His appointed officers in various realms. This authority is at all times ministerial and never an executive power. For example, in capital punishment, as in page 10, life can be taken and capital punishment imposed only according to the law of God and with a commission from Him. Romans 13, 1-6 states that officers of state are ministers of God This is so strong that civil officers who exercise the ministry of justice and who have been delegated God's power to take life are spoken of by God as Elohim in Psalm 82, that is, little gods, small g. A further aspect of this representation of God is seen in Making War, as on page 10. Rushdoony says that the power to kill is God's power. It must be exercised according to God's law, and it is not man's power, but God's power at all times. Ethics. The principle governing humanistic ethics is that all should accord with the principle of life. Anything which suppresses this principle of life is to be opposed. However, beyond this, there is a rejection of law, inasmuch as law is seen as being anti-life, and freedom, or the good life, is seen as living beyond law, beyond good and evil. Capital punishment, for example, being the taking of life, is not permitted except in rare cases. So too, Christian morality is rejected wholesale because it is law-orientated and because it is life-suppressing in their terms. For Christianity, of course, morality is defined by the law of God, and even intense religiosity and religious exercises cannot trump regard for this law, as in Proverbs 28 verse 9, where God will not hear man's prayer if he turns away from hearing the law. As opposed to humanism, capital punishment, for example, is mandated. Suicide is self-murder, and even attempted suicide is a crime. Furthermore, even sympathy with a convicted criminal is a sin. Additionally, rebellion against due authority and anarchism are presumptuous in that they seek to arrogate power unto the self which God has appointed to others, and is, as a result, a sin. Oaths and sanctions. There are no humanistic negative sanctions listed here that I can see. There is a positive sanction, however. Life. If you reverence life, then you will somehow come into life and embrace life in its fullness. For the Bible, the ultimate negative sanction is, of course, death. Humanism's principle of life, liberation from God's law, is, according to the Bible, liberation from life, that is death. Proverbs 8:36, he that sins against me wrongs his own soul. All they that hate me love death. The positive sanctions for the Christian faith is liberty under God's law. Moses exhorts the people to choose life in obeying God's law. Freedom is not possible, nor is life possible at all, without God's law. It is the condition of life and freedom. Succession. Does this outfit have a future? Elite humanists consider themselves as part of the ruling class of the ages, and it is assumed that they will remain forever. Christianity, however, predicts another future. That is, those who reject the law in the name of religion or secular humanism have in effect embraced death and will therefore be disinherited. Except the Lord builds the house, they labour in vain that build it. Psalm 127 verse 1. So life, then, succession, inheritance belongs to those who are saved by grace and who live according to the law of God. Thanks to all who took part in the recording. To participate in the upcoming study, click the Whiz IQ link at LawAndLife.org. Every blessing to you and yours as you seek to know and apply God's law to every facet of your life.